Need some makeup. That's a perfect way to start this class. There we go. But there's no amount of makeup that can make this face look better, right?
Put a bit of powder on the top.
A toupee, right? No one will notice. Okay. One of the biggest issues that we have as Jewish people, and depending on different level of observance, education, or where you come from, or whatever, what have you, is that we think there's Judaism and there's Jew, or there's God, and then there's you, and we feel that we have to work hard in order to connect to Him, when in reality, Chassidus teaches us that a Jew and the Eibishter, a Jew and Hashem, are always connected. There are certain connections that are unseverable. They could be compromised, they could be stretched, they could be hidden, but broken never. That's a Jew with God, it's a Jew with another Jew, it's a Jew with the land of Israel. So no matter what happens, so for example, you have what the situation is going on now, and now you have videos going on. Cyril just showed me a video earlier, how this group of soldiers is about to go into Gaza, and they're all screaming out. I don't think these soldiers necessarily are very observant, or all singing out Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Melech, God is King, Adon Olam. I mean, it's very, very moving. What happened to the guy, 5 minutes ago, or 5 days ago? I shouldn't say 3 weeks ago, I should say. So that the Judaism sounded like it was introduced because the terrorist it introduced a new Judaism or a new connection. The connection was always there. It just took something to bring it up, right? Rekindle, or to re-inspire, or to flare it up. So there's an interesting story.
Add oxygen to the fire.
There you go. So there's an interesting story in the Medrash of a Jew who was not a very nice guy. He was opposite of a nice guy. He was a bad guy, to the extent that he helped the Romans with intel against his own people. We find it even today. You see it on the news. There are Jewish people going around ripping off posters, Jews protesting against Israel. You think to yourself, how much can you hate your own people? So the sadder news is this is not a new phenomenon. Unfortunately, this has existed for hundreds and thousands of years. So what happened was when the Romans came to the temple, I think this guy's name was Yosef something. When the Romans came to the temple, they told this guy, as a token of our appreciation, you could take anything from the temple. Okay. What do you think he took?
The Torah.
There weren't that many Torahs in the temple. They had a Torah.
Yeah.
Because the Kohen Gadol, the king, would read the Torah. What do you think he took?
The menorah.
A what?
He took the menorah.
Oh, solid gold.
Yeah, he took the menorah. So the Romans said, all right. Now you're just being crazy. We appreciate what you did, but that's a little bit too much appreciation. All right, pick something else.
Wait a minute. I give you intel.
So this is the
You
story.
don't think the intel, you don't think the intel was worth the
It was.
menorah?
I don't know if he left it. Maybe he had help. I don't know. Or maybe there's some opinion that say the menorah, the second temple, wasn't the original menorah. Anyway, so he says I can't go back in. So what do you mean you can't go back in? He says, here I'm impure, and I already defiled God's temple once. That's it. So the Romans said, Mitamol, all of a sudden you're becoming religious on us? No. I did what I did, and that's it. So the Romans said to him, now you have to go in. He said, no, not going in. You don't go in, we're going to beat you up. All right? You do what you got to do. And they beat him, and they beat him, and they beat him, and they beat him, and he refused to go in until his last words. He said, woe is to me, oi. Oi vei, oi. Oi is a Hebrew word. Everyone thinks it's Yiddish. Oi vei is not, by the way, Yiddish. It's way earlier. This is, woe is to me that I angered God, I angered my Creator, and he died. So what's going on over here? Here you have a guy who is a few minutes before actively sabotaging his own people. All of a sudden, he gets inspired to say in Yiddish, and he decides he can't affront God. So Chassidus explains it because there is no such thing as a Jew who's disconnected. And there is no such thing as a Jew that you have to introduce to him a totally new idea about God, Torah, unity amongst Jewish people. It's embedded inside. Now the question we're going to talk about today is, when does this connection begin? Or when is a person conscious of this connection? This is just the layout of the Parsha.
Which is it, begin or conscious?
Begin is at the bris.
Begin at birth. Yeah. The connection is you're always there.
Yeah, but you said conscious.
Okay, so that's the next thing.
That would be after the upsharing when he gets his
so let's-
tzitzis, he gets his yarmulke, and he gets
Conscious
the whack
means-
across the
conscious-
behind
conscious
and
means
says, remember.
Right. This is for when you do something wrong. So we're going to base today's class on a story. A story that happened with the fifth Chabad Rebbe, Sholem Doiver of Lubavitch, he's called. And it's based on the very first verse of the Parsha you see in text number 1. It was the third day after Avram had his bris milah. I'll put up here. Avram was sitting at the entrance to the tent, and God appears to Avram. This in the story, as in summary, Hashem came to do the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick. It's one of the things we find a few examples in the Torah that all the mitzvot that God commands us, He does Himself. There's an interesting discussion in Gemara Brachos that God puts on tefillin. But we know what our tefillin says. Our tefillin talks about the unity of God and reward and punishment. What does God tefillin say? He talks about His own unity? No. The Gemara says it talks about the Jewish people. Our tefillin speak about Him, and His tefillin speak about us. So we find that Hashem visited Avram, Hashem buried Moshe. So we find all these different examples. It's because when it says in the Torah you have to emulate God's ways. So the rabbis learn out from different stories in the Torah that God actually walks the walk. The Gemara explains that the third day after the circumcision is the most painful, and therefore Hashem came to visit Avram, and it was a very hot day, and Avram wanted guests. Then the 3 guests appear. Anyway, so that's the gist of the story. Then we have the whole thing, how they're promised Avram and Sarah are going to have a child. So everyone learns this story, and you see text number 2. The Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, tells a story about his own father. He says, when my father, so the question is, he says, when my father was 4 or 5 years old, he went into his grandfather. His grandfather is the Tzemach Tzedek, is called, after a book he wrote. He's also known as the Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch. He was a Rebbe in the mid-19th century, in town of Lubavitch. And so the Sholem Doiver went into his grandfather, Tzemach Tzedek, and says, not fair. I have a bris, Avram has a bris. God revealed Himself to Avram. How come God doesn't reveal Himself to us? I also want God to be revealed to me. Fair question. Yep. There's a coffee in there. Look at me fall asleep.
Decaf.
I think you need calf.
Decaf all day long.
It's
the only kind I drink.
I don't think need caffeine. He needs it. So the Tzemach Tzedek answers. The Tzemach Tzedek answers like this. A very, very enigmatic answer. Tzemach Tzedek answers when a Yid. It's in text number 2. You also see it on the screen. There you go. L'chaim. There you go. All right. So when a Jew, a tzaddik, decides at 99 years old that he has to circumcise himself, he is worthy of God revealing Himself. So what's the Tzemach Tzedek answering him? It seems that the Rebbe Rashab goes over to his grandfather. The Sholem Doiver goes over to his grandfather and says, "Listen, I also want revelation. Avram got it. I should get it." So it sounds like what the Tzemach Tzedek is saying is here. Slow down, tiger. Not Avram, all right? Do you remember your bris? No, you're 8 days old. Avram was 99 years old. A little bit different. He was the first one. You're like the billionth one. So get in line, okay? Instead of giving him a roundabout answer, right? Basically saying, you're not Avram. He deserved it. You didn't deserve it. Isn't that what he's saying?
That's what it sounds like.
That's what he's saying. But he gives when a Jew decides at 99 years old that he should circumcise himself, first of all, he didn't decide. God commanded him. Right? And second of all, okay, so he did it. And again, not taking anything away, but how does that answer the question? I mean, he's not answering the kid's question. You with me?
Well,
Yep.
he's sort of saying, hey, slow your roll.
Exactly. You're not like Avram. Slow your roll. Yeah.
Hey, you're not like a roll.
So say that.
There's your answer.
And by the way, it's not like the answer doesn't have precedent. We have a very interesting measure. Check out text number 3. I'll put it up here on the board. Text number 3. This is the question and answer. Anyway, text number 3 is a very interesting medrash. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha says, Moshe likened himself to Avram, but it didn't work. Why? Where is it? We'll get back to all these messages in a second. It says why? Because look over here. It says Avram said, "I am here." When God called at the end of this week's parsha, and Hashem calls to Avram, He says, "Hineni, I am here." It's a sign of humility. I'm here for whatever you want. So because of that, he got kahuna, he got priesthood, and he got kingship. And you see in there, he says, one second. You see, it's on the board. He merited both. As he stated, God sworn that He will not relent, and you are a priest forever, the righteous king. And then he merited kingship, as it says in last week's parsha. The king of Sodom went out to greet him in the king's valley. Now, similarly, Moses sought to do the same. So when God called Moshe by the burning bush, what did Moshe say? Hineni. Same thing. I'm here for priesthood. I'm here for kingdom. Whatever you need. God says, slow your roll, kid. Relax. You're a good guy, but you're not Avram. So God says to him, do not exalt yourself in the presence of the king, and do not stand in the place of great ones. So the Tzemach Tzedek could have just said, listen, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be Avram. It didn't work for him. It's not going to work for you. It's okay. It's not, a kid goes to his father, I can't hit a home run. I can't hit a home run either. I can't hit a 95 mile per hour fastball. It's all right. That's why they're in the majors. That's why Avram's in the book and you're out of the book. That's why you're reading about him and he's not reading about you, right? I mean, it's such a simple answer. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to the questions. So what was he trying to teach him? Because obviously his grandfather was trying to teach him something. Now you might say, okay, it's a story about special people and a tzaddik and everything else. But there are a lot of stories that happen with the tzaddikim, between father to son, mother to daughter, that we don't know, or they weren't publicized. The fact that this story was made public and it was told over generations means that there is a message for everybody, not just for the Rebbe. It's very easy to say, okay, that's a holy person answer. I don't get it. Or like Barbara says, over my head. Always. I'm just here for the cookies. So we see this, and a kid, and he's just a little pitzela. He's a little pitzela kid. Now, another detail of the story that needs analyzing. The Friedrich Rebbe goes out to say he was either 4 or 5. Do I care if he's a 4 or 5? Just say he was a young child. Basically, the idea is that a kid didn't understand, and his grandfather explained it to him. Do I really care how old he was? My wife has a relative like that. When she tells a story, she gets so hooked up on the details. She's sitting there like, just say the story. I don't care. It really doesn't make a difference, right?
And they were wearing a white shirt.
No, I think it was green. Like
But the buttons were not matched.
right,
Well, I mean,
It was a Wednesday.
Certain-
It was raining outside.
certain questions,
yeah.
may require you to understand the age. And certain questions, age is irrelevant.
Okay, so I think in this question, he's a young. Say he's a young child.
Yeah.
And by the way, again, it doesn't seem to make a difference. But because the Frierdiker Rebbe said it, and every detail the Rebbe says is special, so there is a difference. There's a difference between 4 and 5 and 6. It's brought down in the Gemara. Look at text number 4. It's brought down in the Gemara. Go back over here. That when do we start? When does a child really start to understand stuff? 6. Look at text number 4. Text number 4 says, "Do not accept a child less than 6 years to study. Once he's 6, stuff him with knowledge like an ox." That means the fact that the Rebbe Rashab was 4 or 5, it makes a difference. You tell him you're too young, you'll come back. And not only is he too young for Torah knowledge, he's also too young for money. Let's say a kid does a transaction. Is it binding?
No.
It depends.
Well, yeah.
And you should have known the answer is always yes.
Yes.
So
It's never a yes or no. It's always a collusion.
Legally,
It's-
in the civil system,
No.
I don't think he's.
it's so in Jewish law. Well, if the kid did a transaction that's beneficial to him, is it binding? You were thinking that someone took advantage of the kid. What if the kid took advantage of right?
The kid went to the candy store and bought a piece of candy. He's 6 years old. Is it a binding transaction? Yes. He bought a piece of candy.
No. So the question is. So look at text number 5. The Rambam talks about there's a whole laws of buying and selling. Because in the laws of buying and selling are the laws of what's a binding transaction. Right? So for example, when just to give a far out example, why did Moshe smash the tablets when he came down from the mountain? What does one thing got to do with the other? He angry, he smashed things. Reason is because God was one side of the relationship. The Jewish people on the other side of the relationship. The Ten Commandments or the tablets were the document. So Moshe basically ripped the document, no relationship, no sin. That was his that was his logic, right? So the text number 5, the Rambam says like this.
Then why do we have to remember it? It's one of the 6 things that we have to remember.
No, we
but
don't
if
remember
it
that.
wasn't a binding contract at the time,
That's one of the things we remember.
the golden calf?
No,
No?
it's not one of the 6 things. We remember that God took care of us in the desert. We remember what God did to Miriam, Shabbos.
Okay.
God took us out of
Remember
Egypt.
what
Terror.
Amalek did?
Right. Yeah. Not that we never remember. No, that God remembers. God's like a woman, never forgets. But the old joke is, my wife says, "How come you always forget things?" The husband answers, "What's the point of 2 people remembering the exact same thing?" So the Rambam writes as a book, as a code of law, says the following rules apply to a minor. Until she's 6 years old, they may not transfer property to others at all. Not binding at all, 0. Now, from the age of 6 until they attain 13, some people say, depends what, for real estate it's 20, whatever. But you have to judge him individually. If a kid has a head on his shoulders and understands what he's doing, then the transaction is binding. If the kid's just a yokel, he doesn't understand what's going on, then no, it's not binding. So that means, so here we have a kid, 4 or 5 years old, and he's asking a very, very deep question. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I was probably thinking, Cocoa Puffs, tricks, lollipops, candy, pizza. Truth is, most of that stuff is not true anymore. The pizza, that's still.
That explains it.
Yeah, pizza.
Now we know.
By the way, don't get me started. I might cut the class short. Always go for a nice slice of pizza. All right. So what's the message here? That we have.
Rockies is going to be closed. You can move the class over there.
So what's the message here? You got a 4 or 5 year old kid asking a very deep spiritual question. How does it translate to us? Okay. Let's get a little bit deeper. So there seems to be a difference of discussion of how do we go about motivating kids to learn. So Maimonides takes the approach, all kids are idiots. Or Bill Cosby said, all kids are stupid. He says, don't get offended. My kids are stupid, your kids are stupid. You were also stupid. So was I, right? He has the whole thing. All kids are stupid. Maimonides has this thing that basically you have to motivate them. They don't understand. They don't appreciate the learning. You're promising them candy. And you want that, and they want the candy. You want the learning. So they learn in order to get the candy. But they're learning. So slowly over the years, you get that they get less candy, more learning, until right, the problem is you condition them.
Until they're finally very chubby and
Exactly.
I had a person when I was getting my master's in special ed that said, I don't understand teachers who come out and say, you're bribing kids when you give them candy or a prize. He says, what does it matter as long as they're learning?
Yeah. So I remember on my last.
Yeah, but with some kids, you need that. It's
Yeah.
like, just holding
Yeah.
up, just,
Because they don't value the content of what you're teaching them.
yeah, and they're not interested, but they know if there's something at the end, yeah, they will do it, they will learn it.
Right. So, but Larry,
he does it every
yeah, but what I was saying is, who cares why they're learning?
Yeah.
They're learning.
No,
Every
he gives
Shabbos
the
he's got
kids-
a bag of candy.
Right,
Yeah.
and I
He
don't
didn't give
get,
me a Twizzler.
nor me.
You don't ask. I remember my last teaching job. So the principal was very, very, very square. So she came in to view my class, and we were learning. The kids were calling out, but the kids were screaming out the answers, and all the kids were excited. So I thought, wow,
Engaged.
that was a great lesson. I come into her office as Rabbi Andruzi. Your lesson was a disaster. I'm like, what? Absolute chaos. I said, but the kids are calling out. I said, the whole point of the structure is to learn. Who cares? Who cares? The kids are excited. They're learning. I had to sit there. I said, we didn't see eye to eye. I said, who cares why they're learning? They're learning. So they call out the answer. The kids are excited, So that's how the Rambam writes it. You can't expect much from kids. They want Twizzlers. So you got the sitter and the Twizzler. So, or like, Jerry Seinfeld has a joke, which will tie you nice because tonight's their holiday. The kids, when the whole thing was get candy, get candy, get candy, get candy. So the concept of Halloween is introduced to them. It's like, what? People are just giving away candy? They can't,
Yeah. Strangers.
Yeah.
Complete strangers. You can go to a stranger's house and give free candy.
Because
For the other 364 days of the year.
You're a
you
creep,
say,
exactly.
Never accept candy from a stranger.
that's why the Gentile holidays don't make any sense, right? So that's one way of viewing it. Then comes the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says is a totally different view of children. He says your expectations of kids are way too short. That means kids. You see in text number I skipped. Ooh, the M didn't make it. It's Ramba. So Rambam. If you're not here in person, you don't get it. We can't expect kids to find resonance in Torah and godliness. Comes at Tzemach Tzedek, and he says, it's not true. That's not true. He says, you're underestimating. Kids are very comfortable with God.
Mm-hmm.
Kids have the simplistic view. Who created it? God. Okay. It's not complicated.
But they don't analyze it and say, well, what material did he use? What
Fine.
instructions did he use?
Fine, but sometimes...
Who needs to know?
No, but
Where's the
sometimes
blueprint?
the point is that because adults we're so cynical, and we think everyone is sketchy and everyone's trying to cheat us or fool us. So when the kid asks a question, we think it might be coming from a similar place. We don't realize this kid is simple. He's asking you a question. He wants the answer, and if the answer is, if it's spiritual or godly, he'll be okay with that. Look at text number 7. Well, I skipped text number 6. Text number 7. It says this is the story teaches us that even a child can be bothered to the point of tears. Right? In the story in text 2, the Rebbe Rashab was on the verge of tears. not by physical trivialities, but rather by why God has not revealed himself to them. In other words, we must educate our children that they should know that godliness is a part of their lives. And it's something that they can enjoy to the point that it should truly bother them. Why God appeared to Avram and didn't appear to me. Now, studies have shown, and you're thinking, okay, this is a JLI class, and you can give one rabbi quotes another rabbi as circular reasoning. I mean, how do you know I'm right? Another rabbi said I'm right. Thank you.
I'm a
least you
rabbi,
cite-
and I said I'm right.
Exactly.
At least you cite your source.
Right. A big rabbi, right? So let's bring in some
Size has nothing to do with it.
huh?
Size has nothing
Exactly.
to do with it.
Exactly. So too much pizza for that rabbi. Right. So let's bring in some other sources. Okay, so that means studies have been shown. And we see in text number 8. This is written by Lauren Steele. Simple ways to talk to your kids about God. You could, if you want, you can send the link, or if you remind me, I'll put the link in the YouTube video. This is from a site called fatherly.com. And he said text number 8. And he says if they aren't involved in religious practices, even if they aren't, children typically become aware. Check this out, between the ages of 4 and 6. Interesting that the story said 4 or 5, right? Just by picking up on his presence in the world. By 6, if your child hasn't asked about God, you can ask them.
I need to interrupt you for 1 minute. Did you get 10 for tonight?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, because our son-in-law was going to go and do it, but if he doesn't have to, he won't.
Right. We have a meeting for tonight. Come on.
So
Yeah.
we have 10.
Yeah. As for the idea that
We don't have 10 right now.
right,
I understand
we
that.
called it for
Just to
8:30.
be, just to,
No, but Avi was going
Right.
to go for Larry. And
Yeah, I know.
so-
Baruch Hashem, we got it. Sorry, yeah, I didn't let you know. As for the idea, well, Larry's in the men's chat, he should know. As for the idea that a child's belief in God is not any more profound than her belief in the tooth fairy, studies indicate that this is not the case. Let me read the last line. As for the idea that a child's belief in God is not any more profound than her belief in a tooth fairy, studies indicate that is not the case. That means, as adults, we think, oh, the kid's just believing in some fantasy, something made up, unicorns, tooth fairies, and or whatever it is. They, Marvel superheroes, whatever it is. And there's also some superhero god. So studies have shown this is not the case. Look at the text number 9. This is from Ashley Merriman. This was printed in Newsweek, October 2009. I don't know if facts changed since then, or maybe kids have. But what do kids understand about God? So Jean Piaget, I don't know if I'm pronouncing.
Yeah. Good job.
Thank you. The Swiss early pioneer of child development concluded that children were incapable of having true concept of God. They just thought of him as supersized magical version of their parents. Now, but more recent research suggests that Piaget was estimating kids.
Underestimating.
I said?
You said
You said
estimating.
estimating.
Sorry.
Rewind the tape.
Oh, underestimating. In the words of Gene Wilder, that was just to get your attention. Piaget was, I was so worried about getting his name right, was underestimating kids. Children as young as 4 understand that prayer is a qualitatively different than a wish, and it's a special kind of conversation between them and God. It's around that same age that kids show some appreciation of divine omnipotence and omniscience. They can explain to you that a person made a car or a pizza. There's pizza again. But it was God who made the mountains. So here, it's not finished. By 5 or 6, they understand that even though mommies are very smart, God knows things that mommies can't know. like that joke. Kid goes over to his father, who's an atheist. Says, "Where do we come from?" So the father says, "We come from monkeys." Kid goes to the mother and says, "Where do you come from?" Says, "God created Adam and Eve." So says, "Wait, but Daddy told me you come from monkeys." That's his side of the family. Although they have a fluent enough mastery of that principle, they can predict God's superior knowledge in novel circumstances. School-age children believe that God is in direct control of their lives, much more so than adolescents or adults. So here we have some I guess you call foreign sources, not necessarily Jewish sources, pointing to the fact that children have an understanding, an innate understanding of something greater than them. There's a higher power, a godly power in their life, and our job is to work to tune this awareness. Don't shut them out. Like I once heard a guy saying, the problem is that most adults, they make kids feel stupid when they ask a question. So he said, for example, a kid will ask, why is the moon round? So a typical response of an adult will be, what shape do you think it should be? Like, idiot. And in fact, what you're doing is you're crushing, you're crushing the kid's curiosity. Kids are born, they grow into, they're attuned to a higher entity. And if you see the great article by Jonathan Sachs, text number 10, he says, children, he says, are naturally spiritual. They're fascinated by the vastness of the universe. And especially, by the way, for kids, the universe is huge. I remember I went back to my school from elementary. I was like, wow, this building's tiny. When I was a kid, it was huge. Right? And
You were shorter.
yeah, right? You know, by the way, they did,
perspective.
scientists did a study a while ago where they made everything for adults to scale for kids. Because sometimes, adults would get very frustrated. The kid can't do this, can't do that. So, to us, the chair is always this height. But they made the chair like this height so that adults would have to climb onto the chair and the doorknob, like really high. So the adults should see the world the way a child sees the world. It's very, very interesting. And they pulled them before and after. So I think you can Google it, YouTube it. It's pretty interesting. And they've done similar studies, like for kids, for people who don't understand dyslexia. Right? They make them sit in the classroom and say, "What is a B? What are you, stupid? You can't see it's a D." And when you see it through their eyes, it's very different. So and he continues. They love stories, rituals, songs. They like shape and structure. To be sure, skeptics, atheists often deride it. It's just fantasy. But it only serves to strengthen the corollary that a child's view of reality is instinctively, intuitively religious. Deprive a child by ridiculing faith, abandoning ritual, focusing instead on academic achievement and other forms of success. You starve him or her of some of the most important elements of emotional and psychological well-being. So tell the story that there was a kid who was a big believer in God, and the parent was an atheist. So every time he said, it's from God, it's not God. So finally the father decided, that's it. I'm going to put it to rest. So he took a note, and he wrote it on the paper next to the kid's bed while he was sleeping. He said, God is nowhere. So the kid gets up in the morning, says, all excited, I received a note from heaven, proof that I'm right. So what do you mean? The note says, God is now here.
Perspective.
Yeah.
It's all in the perspective.
So as Professor Miller shows, that's not the same. Miller shows, and again, if you want, this is from The Spiritual Child. It's a book printed in 2015. If you want the link, I can send it to you after class. Shows the research evidence is compelling. Children who grew up in homes where spirituality is a part of the atmosphere are less likely to succumb to depression, substance abuse, aggression, and high-risk behaviors, including physical risk-taking and a sexuality devoid of emotional intimacy. Spirituality plays a part in a children's resilience, physical, mental health, and healing. It is the key dimension of adolescence and its intense search for identity and purpose. The teenage years often take the form of spiritual quest, and when there's a cross-generational bond to which children and parents come to share a sense of connection, to share something larger, an enormous inner strength is born. You can tell that I went through the same thing. And Avram went through the same search. Moshe, everyone goes through the same search. It's a big bond. Indeed, the parent-child relationship, especially in Judaism, mirrors the relationship between God and us. So now let's get back to the story. Now that we know that when a 4 or 5-year-old or a young child comes to ask you a story, you don't say, well, idiot, what do you think you are, Avram? It's not the way. It's not the way. So the kid comes and said, how come Hashem didn't reveal himself? I have a bris, Avram has a bris. How come Hashem didn't reveal himself to me? So you have to understand. Tzemach Tzedek was trying to explain to his grandson, what is the meaning of bris? What's the purpose of a bris milah? just an act? Obviously not. Everyone comes to the bris for the bagels, right?
It locks.
Right? Not everybody comes for lox.
No.
Like lox?
Actually, I like the
I don't
cold
got it
cuts, but
against
they
you.
can't have it with the cream cheese.
There you go, right?
You have
Right.
to have a little roll and not a
So you have, so you're right. You have some cheese dishes, some pizza, shakshuka, right? Guys, I gotta go. But everybody knows that a bris is a very, very significant event. Do you know, statistically speaking, there's no percentages I can give you, but it's been proven through tradition that bris milah is the one mitzvah that Jews have kept the most throughout the generations. More than Shabbos, more than Tefillah, more than Pesach, more than Shani Yom Kippur, bris milah. And not, in all generations, in Russia, on the Romans and everything else, Jews were willing to not keep kosher, not keep Shabbos. Bris. My teacher, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shapiro, he's the head of the Chabad community, he's based in Miami Beach. He told me a story. I learned under him for 2 years. So because he was American, they sent him to Russia in the 70s or 80s. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, so he went. So he went as an American tourist, with suitcases full of food. Not food, sorry. Books, not food, I'm sorry. I was thinking my brother went to India. You with books and mezuzahs and tefillin, So he went to Odessa. Now the way it worked in the olden days, not so old, but 40, 50 years ago, before the fall of communism, there's only 1 or 2 mohelim in entire Russia. So what happens? You have a baby, you have to wait until the mohel comes to town. So sometimes the baby could be 3, 4, 5, 6 months when he gets to bris. It's just he would take the train. That was his life. So this woman, Rabbi Shapiro told me the story. This woman in Odessa. So what do you mean, my son's not going to have a bris on the 8th day? She got on a train from Odessa to Moscow, which if you fly there, it's a nice flight. If you drive there, right? I think he said it was 13, 14, 15, 20-hour train with some sugar. Like a couple days after she had a baby, she went to Moscow. Baby had the bris, turned around, went back, because that's just what you do, right? This is another story with the same lady, by the way. I know it's off the subject, but it's good. It's a good story. So Shapiro told me, he asked her, he says, "Here you're so religious, where do you go to the mikveh?" And by the way, the mikveh is beginning to, the architect and the engineers, are having a meeting with the city next Thursday. I'm not going to be here. It's letting you know it's beginning to pick up steam. Anyway.
I can attest to that. I heard him on the phone today.
Yeah. So he asked. So she said, "I go in the river." Odessa was right by the. So Rabbi Shapiro says, Rabbi Shapiro was born in Cleveland, right? He's an American guy. So he said, "That's in the summer. What do you do in the winter? The Russians closed off all the mikvahs." So she told me. She looked at him like, "You go in the river." Like, you know what it means to go in the river in Odessa in the winter?
Sure.
Cold.
It's
cold,
all
nippy.
polar bears.
Well, first of all, you probably have to crack the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
So Rabbi Shapiro told me when he came back to New York and he told the Rebbe this, the Rebbe started crying. Because it wasn't just that she did it. It was the absoluteness of it. That there is
Yeah,
no
why do you question it?
compromise. There is no other way.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe said to Rabbi Shapiro, "I want you to go downstairs and tell all the guys downstairs, because all these guys think they're having such self-sacrifice and such, their lives are so hard. Go tell them what real sacrifice looks like, right?" Yeah. So, anyway, so what is a bris? So the idea is every Jew is connected to God, but sometimes there are things that are obscuring, tainting, clouding up that connection. The purpose of the bris milah is really significant because it removes the cover to the connection should be, more. It's like a pipe. You got to remove the cholesterol, so to speak, right? So this is what the Tzemach Tzedek said. Tzemach Tzedek saying is that what made Avram special was, you really remember last week we learned how old was Avram when he discovered God? 3. Remember that? How old was he when he started teaching about God? 40. Took him 37 years by himself. On his own. Everyone else served idols. 37 years by himself. He figured it all out. From 40 to 35 to 75, he was convinced he was right, but God never told him. When's the first time God reveals himself? When Avram 75. It means for 35 years he did it all on his own, and he continued in everything else, and he's preaching and everything is great, and he it seems like he's achieved everything he can achieve. God comes to Avram and says, you know something? I think you can do more. Although you've done great, I think you can achieve more. You're still holding yourself back. Now you imagine you're 99 years old and everyone else is serving idols and killing and stealing and raping, doing whatever they do. Whatever, rape, murder, arson, rape, right? Like Blazing Saddles, for those of you guys that don't know, right? So,
Yeah, I got the reference.
yeah, there you go. So, and everyone else is doing something wrong. And here you discovered God on your own. And you're like, the distance between you and everyone else, it's not like, okay, Abraham was a little bit more religious and they were a little less religious. No. That's why he was called, like you heard me say this before, Avram Ivri, Avram on the other side. Because the whole society were barbarians. Avram was the only model citizen standing up for ethics. In this week's Parsha, Avram fights to spear Sodom and Amorah. And they were nice people at all. So God comes and tells him, says, you know something? You can push yourself. You can do more. A regular person would say, you know what, God? I have a neighbor here. I have a neighbor here. Why don't you go talk to them a little bit? And right? Like Bill Cosby's joke when God, God said you have two males.
Yeah, 2 male hippos.
They said, that's it. I'm taking everything down. I'm using it as firewood. I'm opening up a zoo, right? I mean, that's what a normal reaction would be: frustration, or
Or say, you changed one of them.
Exactly.
No, I don't work that way.
Right. So the Tzemach Tzedek is saying the real lesson is the reason why Avram merits revelation is because Avram is constantly pushing himself. He's constantly looking to separate any separation between him and God. That's special. So you see over here that in the book of Deuteronomy, text number 11. I lost mine. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe predicts about the coming of Mashiach in Messianic times, and the Jewish people are going to come back to Israel in security, and safety, and observance. He uses an interesting line. He says, "Circumcise the foreskin of your heart, and be stiff-necked no more." What does that mean, the foreskin of your heart? And what does it mean? So the Rambam says in text 11b, I'll put it up here. He says circumcise the heart, meaning that you should accept all the mitzvahs. Be stiff-necked no more means you shouldn't do any mitzvahs. Let's say you shouldn't do any other negative mitzvahs. So Avram teaches us you could always try to move past your ego, try to move past your self-importance. In this week's parsha, when Avram was talking to Hashem, he says, "I am nothing. I'm dirt and ashes." Avram looked at himself as, that's why when he says Hineni, it's special, because he really thought himself as zero. And even though he thought maybe I got rid of all my ego and got rid of everything, God says, no, you can still do more. And Avram rises up to the challenge. That's why Avram's so special. That's why Hashem speaks about Avram in glowing terms. I think he's those little Avram. He said, so the Rebbe says like this. It's the lesson over here, text number 12. It's a long text, so we'll go into 2 different slides, right? Oh no, it is all one slide. Okay. The lesson for everyone is each of us can attain revelation of godliness by resolving, no matter how high or low our spiritual level, we can still do more. We can still circumcise our heart. We can still cut off the hard work, the mundane lives aspects of our lives, and so many times we find it. The rabbi says, no, you can do more. I said, Rabbi, what are you bothering me? I come to Minyan. I put on tefillin every day. Now I'm keeping kosher. Go bother that guy. That's not the answer. The answer is we always got to keep pushing ourselves. This means that we educate our children not to be disheartened by the mundanity of the world. The child knows that the world is not significant. A kid inherently knows what has value, what doesn't. He knows. And the only thing significant is Torah. Well, you have to have that conviction as well. This conviction should be so resolute that it'll last into old age. the child will always remember, no matter how high a spiritual level they achieve, they can still do more. That's why Avram, in Hebrew, Avram is called a mahalach. Avram is called a goer. The first commandment of Hashem tells Avram is lech lecha, go. A Jew always has to be on the move. Move meaning always achieving more. It's not just about the physical. It's not just about the physical. The physical things you can get. And it's not just about the physical act. There's a lot more to it. We're going to learn in Tanya soon that getting closer. We're going to learn in Tanya soon that you can do a mitzvah, but you got to do it with feeling. But the beautiful thing is that by adults, our view is skewed. For kids, they see it. That's why before the Yom Kippur War, the Rebbe had a big campaign that kids should learn Torah, make rallies of children, because it says from the mouths of kids the Jews shall get strength. I'm paraphrasing a verse. And the Rebbe actually said, I had this was before the war. I had no idea even why I decided to say it. And what was pushing me to say it now, after the attack of 73? So now I understand. So children have this unadulterated, uncomplicated view. God told Avram. That's it. It's that purity we have to try to carry over and indoctrinate into ourselves. The Torah says, going back to the war in Israel in 1967, the Torah says if you put on tefillin, the enemies are going to be afraid. So we think of it, adults, we think of it as, what does it really mean? It's a metaphor. No, that's the reality. I'm led up with the story. So we're getting time to dive Marv. So during World War II, I think I've said this story once upon a time. It's been a while. So a lot of parents did anything to spare their children. So some of them gave their children to Christian families, or to monasteries, or to Christian orphanages to spare their children. A lot of these parents didn't make it out. So it was known that there were Jewish kids in Christian orphanages, and they wanted to get them out. So there was one rabbi, I think his name was Ephraim Silver. Pretty sure his last name was Silver. I think his first name was Ephraim. So he took it upon himself, because after the war was over, a lot of American Jews came to try to help out the Jews in Europe. So this rabbi, Ephraim Silver, he came and he made it his mission to try to get these Jewish kids out of, they say, the Cardinal of Paris. He passed away, I think, already. He used to be the Cardinal of Paris, was one of these kids. He was a Jew. I'll Google his name afterwards. Anyway, so they try to rescue all these kids out of these Christian orphanages. So what happened? He came to the orphanage, and the priest said, without documentation, I can't release the kid. So okay, so what are you doing? Documentation? Just a world war. What documentation? Where documentation? So, sorry, rules are rules. So the rabbi said, but let's go through the names. You can see. Names are Jewish names. No, but Markovich is Russian. You kind of, that one's Polish. It can be. So the rabbi thought of a genius idea. He said, do you mind if I come back when you put in the kids to sleep? So the priest says, all right. So he comes in the evening, all the kids are laying there, and about to go to sleep, and he walks in, he says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu. All of a sudden, the Jewish kids sat up. Said, Mama, Daddy. Because you can try to cover over the Judaism, but the Judaism is, and it should never take a war or outward fighting to reveal it. It shouldn't take like in the first story we told, the story with the Romans, to bring out the Judaism. We have to try to actively, express and arouse and elevate our Judaism always, and it's contagious. So when we do it, we're proud Jews. Then, all right, questions, comments, answers. I don't know.
Well,
Okay.
actually, that was a good question. That when a student asks, "Why is the moon round?" It's a good question. Well, what shape do you think it should be?
That doesn't answer the question.
Right. Well, while you asked the question while you're looking it up on Google,
The
ChatGPT.
answer is because One, it's spinning, and two, because it has gravity. Gravity ultimately wants to become a sphere.
But the moon is not spinning.
All right,
The moon is
what-
most certainly spinning.
we'll get to that in a second. All right, so
It doesn't spin on an axis.
let's.
It most certainly does.
Okay, 1 second. We'll get to this. 1 second. Wait.
It's-
Let's finish this.
It's live.
Michael J. 1 second.
With-
1 second. We'll finish it. We'll get to this. Neil
Bunch of lunatics.
Tice deGryson over here, whatever his name is. The answer that the Tzemach Tzedek answers to his grandchild, by extension to everyone. Avram Avinu merited God relation because of the decision to circumcise himself. Circumcision in a spiritual sense means to cut away the mundanity and distractions. The message to us in the broader sense is like small children, we're naturally inclined. All we got to do is get out of our own way. Okay, key points. Right, the story of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe Rashab. Today we educate children on their level, enticing them to do Torah, typically, an education with treats and rewards. The story tells us that don't underestimate the kids. Yeah, they're a lot better than we think. Cutting away mundanity and worldly distractions triggers our natural disposition towards our faith in God. I was actually talking about this to a Christian pastor. No one's born hating. No one's born afraid of the other person. We teach that. We as in society. Sometimes, kids, they have no problem. They'll go to the playground. They'll play with the black kid, the Asian kid, the Arab kid. Kids aren't afraid because they see a person. They see a person. It's us with our, right? All right, guys, have a good week. All right.
Ooh, very tiny.
Good? I think we ended it.